You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rokfin, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. I want to get your insights into the concept of the homunculus as it pertains to alchemy.
Okay. All right. So, well, there are actual... Let me think. There are...
Maybe we could start with what is a homunculus, your definition.
Well, I was going to start there, but I was going to say there are like kind of three directions there.
Okay.
What the homunculus, the word itself means is little man, is a little person, right? And so it's an area of alchemy and actually early science that concerns itself with artificial life, of making artificial life. And I say science because it actually goes further back than European alchemy. You'll find someone like Jabir ibn Hayyan, who is considered an alchemist, but more of an early chemist in a way. And he writes on artificial life, but he writes about it very scientifically, what we would say scientifically, in the sense that, and so does Paracelsus in his model. But Avicenna is saying, well, take a piece of each tissue of the human body, so some nerve tissue, some muscle, some blood, what have you, put it into a container that has the shape of a womb, right? And within it, you also put a mix of some chemicals, but also involving sperm and blood, right? Because those are the two creative kind of principles. And what the other stuff provides is an architecture for it to go in. And then you put it into a sphere, and then that sphere is within several other spheres, each rotating, mimicking the rotation of the planetary spheres. Because his idea is, if we replicate, and this is science, if we replicate all the conditions and materials, we'll end up with the same result, right? And that's where things are scientific in that sense of, well, if you do this and do this and do this, that should happen. And if I tell you how to do it, it should happen too. In science, it's reproducibility, this idea of reproducibility. And that goes back very early on. So that's one idea of a homunculus. Is this experimentation to make a small life of some form or another? There's an earlier one that comes out of a book called The Book of the Cow, which is, as one science writer puts it, obscene experiments in obstetrics and gynecology. It's like, it's some rough reading. It's about it's about, you know, taking sperm and blood and a cow and implanting that into the womb after chemically preparing it, and then doing certain things with its blood. It's really intense. And then anyway, out comes a homunculus, a little person. But then depending upon what you do with it, because what a lot of them were used for were for prophecy. So
now, do you think they were really doing these experiments in the way that you're describing?
This is my favorite thought game. It's like you read this and you go, really?
Yeah.
Really? But then you look at other human practices and you go, yeah, really? I mean, yeah, really. There's no reason not to think so.
Yeah.
I mean, when you see other things that are, like, you know, actually documented that are done and were done. You know? Yeah, the pursuit of medicine, longevity makes us do strange things to animals. That's all I can say. That's all I can say.
Well, some of the outcomes are so unreal and fantastical from some of these homunculus experiments.
Yeah. Fantastic is the word. Yeah. You get some sort of clotted element coming out. But anyway, what you do with one of them is that you put it into a silver bowl and you give it a little mirror, and then you let it bathe in milk. And then it will prophesize what is going on around and across the world. There's another one that's once made, you kill it, and you make a salve out of it, and you rub it on your eyes, and you can see spirits. Okay? So, that's one area of the homunculus.
Yeah.
There's another area of the homunculus which comes into the works of Paracelsus. And his is what is really based upon more what then was like a contemporary Western idea of the birth process, of the conception, gestation, birth process. And that is the union of sperm and blood, right? Because this is what they noticed that came out of a male mammal and a female mammal. And this comes out of Aristotle. This is what he says. It's when the sperm interacts with the menstrual blood, potential for a creature is formed, right? And he says it's like the sperm acts on the blood like fig juice does on milk, that there's a curdling, kind of giving it a form sort of an effect, right? So this is the early theories of it. So Paracelsus and others before him, no doubt, go, well, we got sperm aplenty. All we need is blood. So his idea was that you take blood, the best blood is from a red-haired young man who's had a very good meal of red meat and red wine the night before. And you get his blood, right? And from that, you unify the sperm and the blood in a flask, you seal it, you heat it. After 40 days, there's certain things you feed it, it starts to take on a form, and then at some point, a fully formed human being with all fingers and toes comes into existence. And you must feed it and educate it. And it is the source, actually, of all giants and I forget what else, but basically all the magnificent giants and creatures of the world.
And this is very similar to the concept of the golem, right?
Yes, in a way. The golem is made from clay and a formula. So that's more like computers and robots.
Ah, okay.
The golem is, the homunculus is more like artificial life, right? And if you've kept up on it, artificial womb, artificial placenta, it's not far. Mm-hmm. They've actually they've actually bought it to a cell that is reproducing up to, and then they had to stop it. They weren't expecting it to take. This is talking about the artificial womb. They implanted it with a potential embryo and it took. And they didn't think it would take for more than a day. And then it went on for 2 or 3 and they were like, okay, got to stop this.
Wow. Now, earlier...
very, very, very close. And that is also in Paracelsus. He speaks of making a wax figure that is a homunculus. And then the idea is that, if you look up Paracelsus, look up homunculus, you'll find both formula and recipes there. Or I have a zine on the homunculus. You can check it out there as well. And what he says is it acts as a lightning rod, in a sense. That if someone is having an issue for healing, right, that you make this sort of it's kind of a reverse voodoo doll. In this idea that you're feeling ill because there's some astral force attacking you. What you do is you make a wax figure that's in the configuration with it, so that that force is channeled out of you, so that healing can then take place. It's actually pretty sophisticated psychology. It will give you something to preoccupy your mind with, since you're neurotic as hell, and then let's talk about like getting you better. Yeah. So it's actually a very sophisticated, and I would really look into it in terms of some aspect of the homunculus. But I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, that's okay. That was great. What I want to close on is, earlier you mentioned that there could be possible reestablishment of certain alchemical practices out in our mainstream reality. What do you see that could indicate that?
Well, first of all, I think what I mean by that, it is there was an expression that came about, I think, in the 70s, maybe late 60s, called a re-enchantment of nature.